Welcome to the Tyler's Place Podcast, the official podcast of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. I am your host, Matt Bowers, 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason, and also the Tyler's Place Podcast is in the top 20 of Feedspot.com's top 20 Masonic podcasts. You can go to feedspot.com, type that into the search engine, and see our name along with a bevy of other Masonic podcasts, and I will include that information for everyone to check out when they have the opportunity. This is the third installment of my little series on Blue Lodge catechism instructors for Entrant Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason. And this one is on the Master Mason degree with Brother Mark Smith, former past master at my Blue Lodge, Mt Ararat, as well as a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. And before I forget, he is also the instructor at my Blue Lodge for those working in the officer line to move up to Worshipful Master one day. So Brother Mark is a very busy brother indeed. As with the previous two episodes, similar questions in this podcast as the others, but Mark gives his own perspective on the Master Mason degree and catechism and really shows an emotional tie-in with what the Master Mason degree and catechism means to him, as well as you can really learn from anyone at any age what something in the work might mean. I'm going to stop talking. You know how much I love to do introductions. Sit back, relax, and listen to my conversation with Brother Mark Smith.
To me, this stuff is, it's, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's kind of like, I can only like relate it to like when I'm at work, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's like, oh my God, what did you do? I'm like, I did my job. Well, you got the trip to Hawaii. Yeah, I didn't know we were having a contest. I just did my job.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with this stuff. I just do what I'm supposed to do, and I just stay the course, and in time, you get where, you know, you want to be.
Well, the other reason I picked you too is your perspective is pretty unique in that you are a past master. You're the current instructor for the Master Mason degree catechism, and you also instruct our Blue Lodge line for the exemplification process. So with all of that, how do you fit all that experience into the Master Mason catechism teaching?
Well, so for me, what I try to do with the catechism instruction specifically, I guess I kind of do it with the third degree stuff as well for the instruction for the masters. To me, to learn something, to memorize something, that's a chore. So you try to take the chore out of it. To me, what you need to do is you express, all right, so you go through initially what you're going to cover. Once you cover it, delve into it, you explain it, you tear it apart. What does it mean? Then you put it back together and you rebuild it as a structure that they can, then now they have the understanding of what it is, what it means. It's easier to remember the words. So that's when we get into the memorization part. And yeah, there's a lot of just memorization, but when you understand what it's talking about, it helps you remember it. So you can recall it. It's not about getting through the test one time. This is something that they need to know for the rest of their lives, right? They may be, 30 when they learn it, and at 50 or 60, they may move to a different town and retire. Mm-hmm. They're going to go into a different lodge at that point, or they may travel. They may start traveling later on. They may go to Europe. I remember when I went to Pennsylvania, I was a past master. I had learned, so much, and I was very sharp with it back then. I'm not as sharp today as I was then.
Right.
Pennsylvania, with Ryan Thomas, another past master. He wasn't a past master at that point, I don't think. But we went together, and they took me into their ante room to examine me because I'd never been to that lodge before. Didn't know anybody there. And this was after Jim Davidson had passed. So, usually you go anywhere with Jim Davidson and you just get a pass because, he knew everybody, right?
Right.
But they're taking me in the back of the exam. I'm answering their questions, and then they got to the Grand Masonic word. And I was like, he didn't say that. And the term that he used wasn't any term that I've ever heard of. But I knew I thought to myself, I think I know what he's asking for. So then I gave him the appropriate response, and I was let into the lodge. It was like I was so unsure, and I'm thinking to myself, how would some new guy, right, come up to Pennsylvania and actually be able to get in lodge if they didn't understand what that meant?
Right.
And it was a little bit of a stretch even for me at that point in time. Anyway, getting back to your question, so I like you know, I like to have conversation about what it means, express to them, have them express to me what they think it means. And once they learn that, then we can get into the memorization part of it.
After talking to Dan, I kind of figured out how you get into certain things based on your personality, whether you know it or not. And with that, I learned that the Entered Apprentice Catechism is really the introduction to everything. It's the walk through the door. Fellowcraft, in my opinion, is a bit more esoteric in the lesson, and especially between the battle and the pillars. And Master Mason teaching, to me, is a bit more of the labor, has a bit more of the labor symbolism of Masonry tied to it. What do you feel is the primary teaching of the Master Mason Catechism? Is it the job, your main job as a Mason, or is it, or more?
Well, to me, it's a culmination of everything that came before it. Okay, it's part of the first, it's part of the second, and it has its own new lessons. But to me, the third degree is essentially a whole moral guidebook that you can say this is the compass, this is the lessons that teach you how to structure your life and your moral character, not only inside lodge, but when you're out in the world, like with anybody that you relate to. If you use this moral structure that we put together here in the third degree, it's a guide, right? It teaches a lot of different things, but to me, if you put it all together, just look at it as one big picture, it's a guide on how to live your life. That's the biggest thing for me. The memorization thing, but I like to break it down and teach each part, explain what it means, and then work on remembering the answers. Then I explain how all the parts fit together. So I break it down, then we teach it, then we kind of put it back together. There's catechism isn't just learning the memorization. It's about getting to know each other. It's about creating relationships. It's about helping somebody be a better person, right? So when you fit those parts back together, again, you might walk through some of the same things. You might hear them say something different.
But without reciting directly from the catechism, what's your favorite part of the Master Mason Catechism, and how do you tie that in daily with your life?
Just I'm going to start for a second, because I was wondering about this question when I read it, and I was like, it says, what's my favorite part of the Master Mason degree? So if that's the question I'm answering, I've already got a pre-thought.
Well, what's your favorite portion of the degree, of the Master Mason degree?
It is the part in the degree where you have to pray for yourself. It might seem to everybody to be a very small part, but to me, that part, it's like becoming a man. It's like the symbolism behind it. It shows you that you're a man, that you have to buckle down. You have to endure what's coming by yourself. And that's what we have to do in life. We have to endure difficult things by ourselves through life. And obviously we have a wonderful organization of men and a fraternity of brothers and friends, and so many great people that I've met in Masonry. But when I'm doing my thing every day, I have to endure it myself. There's nobody coming to save me. Okay. The third degree really is, to me, it's the most emotional thing. That it just really pulls at me. So you're by yourself, is what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it yourself, but you're never alone because you have God. So it teaches you to rely on God. And that's the biggest teaching to me of the Master Mason degree. To that point where you have to pray, it's so symbolic to me for what this degree stands for. It's your relationship with Him that helps you get through.
You need a minute?
If you want me to do this without sounding stuffed up, probably.
So you've had the luxury of teaching a large class and I'm sure some small classes. Was my class the largest one you've had?
Remind me how many guys
we had 9.
Yeah, that's the largest one.
Yeah. And at one point, you definitely had to call on the big guns with Brother Jim Reinhardt to whip us into shape. We were a little shaky at getting close to the end.
Yeah, we needed a couple extra days of training in there for sure.
Yeah, but
so large. I like a class. I like a class of about 4 or 5 men. Really, is probably my favorite. And I don't know if that's because I came through with 5 other guys. 6 kind of like top. But it's the reason for me is when you're breaking down the understanding of what's going on, you get collaboration, you get thoughts if you're one-on-one with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to feel like an exam. It can feel like an exam. So when you have a group of men and you're talking about, what something means, you'll get different thoughts. And once somebody starts talking, others follow in and give their own thoughts. So it aids in the discussion. It helps people have a broader understanding of the meaning of each given thing. And for that reason, I do like to have class than less. So it's easier to expound on a given topic. It's not just all me telling somebody what it's all about.
Right.
It's them sharing and expressing what they believe it means, what it meant to them. And I learned things that way too. My last class had a young man who was 18 years old, and I pointed at something and like, this is something that I've never understood. And he said, I think it means this. And I go, what? I think he's right. So to me, it's like I learned something from an 18-year-old man.
Yeah.
And I learn from everybody. And hopefully they learn from me, right? I'm doing the instruction. I enjoy it because it brings me closer to everybody involved. I want to have. I enjoy that part, the social aspect of the fraternity as well as the moral lessons. But a smaller class, that's good for some people too. But I do prefer to have a few men in there. And it can be a little bit more difficult having a larger class because of schedules.
Sure.
Meet together on the same day, having everybody there. Some classes, everybody's there every time. Other classes, very spotty. And when it's spotty, that becomes difficult to make sure that everybody, knows everything.
It would seem to me too that it also could make it difficult to know where everybody's head is, especially when you start to see patterns with things. I mean, there have obviously been people over the years that have checked out, never showed back up, or were considerate enough to make a call and say, "Hey, man, I can't keep up with this." But people create patterns, and they're easy to see sometimes, for sure. I do want to ask, real quick, how did you learn your catechism?
We did not have cipher books when I came through.
Okay, that's going to be the question that I want to ask you, because you've taught with a cipher book and you learned mouth to ear. Advantages and disadvantages.
So mouth to ear to me is the best way to learn. Okay, it was the best way for me personally to learn. It's not the best way for everybody to learn, and I understand that. I do tell the brothers when they come to their first class and they have their book out, I say, put it away. It's not about the book in here. To me, the book is a tool that they can use to practice when they're not, in class, right? So you learn it and you go through it and you've got the tool and you say, oh, I don't remember that word. I don't remember this phrase. I don't remember this, whatever. And you can reuse that tool so that you can continue. When I was going through, I had to call. This is when I was actually preparing for the master, for the lectures. I don't know which one necessarily, probably all 3 for that matter. But I remember I was like, I forgot that word, I forgot that phrase. What's this next part?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd call one of my well-informed brethren, and they would give me a word, or they would tell me the thought that I needed to know to get through, so I could continue practicing on my own. I think that it's a tool that can be used to help, but I don't like to have it open class.
I really have become a firm believer in the work picks you in as much as you pick the work. Your personality will draw you to the things that you want to do. 9 times out of 10, I am really starting to feel that way. It just makes logical sense. So with that, thank you very much to Brother Mark Smith for his insight on the Master Mason Catechism, and thank you very much for listening to the Tyler's Place podcast, the official podcast of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Scottish Rite Freemasonry, the official website of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction at scottishrite.org. You can also check out our YouTube page, youtube.com at Scottish Rite Masons. I am your host, Matt Bowers, 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason, and again, we are in feedspot.com's Top 20 Masonic Podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening here at the Tyler's Place Podcast.